The smell of salt water and exhaust fumes filled the air as Leo, the German shepherd, paced nervously near the edge of the dock. His sharp eyes scanned the dimly lit perimeter of the boatyard, where rusting cargo ships loomed like ghostly giants. In the night, his handler, Victor Novik, stood by his side, the smuggler's usual calm demeanor barely disguising his growing tension. Victor's hand, usually steady on the leash, tightened as his gaze flicked over the shadows. "Easy, Leo," Victor muttered, his voice low and gruff. "We're not here to draw attention." Leo's tail remained still, his ears pinned back. There was something in the air tonight, an unease that Leo, with his finely tuned instincts, couldn't shake. The order had come suddenly, too quickly even for Victor. The smuggling operation was in a delicate state, and Victor had just been informed that they were on the verge of a large shipment, guns, drugs, maybe both, headed to the Eastern Bloc. But something felt off. Something felt like a trap. The night's usual silence was shattered by the low hum of approaching vehicles. Victor turned his head sharply, signaling Leo to stay low. A convoy of black SUVs rolled into view, their headlights slicing through the darkness like blades. The vehicles came to a halt, and men in dark suits emerged, carrying themselves with the predatory confidence of people who lived outside the law. Victor's hand twitched at his side as he adjusted his grip on Leo's leash, but Leo didn't flinch. His gaze remained fixed, trained on the men now approaching. Their faces were unfamiliar, but Victor didn't need to recognize them to know trouble was coming. "Something's wrong, boy," Victor whispered. The men in suits were walking toward a large container where Victor's cargo was waiting, but they weren't alone. There was one figure among them who didn't quite belong. A woman, tall, athletic, with short-cropped dark hair and an intense stare. She was wearing a tactical vest, not something you'd expect to see among smugglers, and her eyes scanned the area with the cold precision of a trained agent. Victor's heart skipped a beat. He had encountered people like her before, law enforcement, or worse, agents from a special task force. They had a way of blending in, of disappearing into the shadows before revealing themselves when it was too late to escape. "Leo, stay!" Victor ordered, his voice tight. But Leo wasn't listening. Something in the woman's gaze had locked onto the dog, and in a heartbeat, the German shepherd made a decision. Without warning, Leo broke free of Victor's grasp, his powerful muscles propelling him forward. He charged straight at the woman, his eyes not on the agents, but on her, the one who wasn't supposed to be here. The woman didn't flinch, but as Leo reached her, she crouched, allowing the dog to barrel into her. Her hands moved with surprising speed, reaching out to catch him before he could do any damage. Victor's heart pounded in his chest as he reached for his gun. But Leo was no longer with him. The German shepherd, his loyalty torn in two, had made the first move of his life that no one had anticipated. Leo's tail wagged once, a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture of trust as the woman spoke softly. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice low but filled with purpose. Victor froze. He knew what that meant. Leo was defecting. The world seemed to slow down as the realization hit him. The dog that had once been his most loyal companion, the one who had smuggled drugs across borders and evaded law enforcement at his side, was now turning against him. Without a word, Leo followed the woman. She didn't need to speak. She had already won. Her team moved swiftly, surrounding Victor and the remaining smugglers, the guns in their hands, a silent declaration of power. "Victor." "No, Vic," the woman said, her voice calm and even. "I think it's time we talk." Victor looked at Leo, now standing firmly by the woman's side, his eyes cold, unrecognizable. "You're making a mistake," Victor said, his voice laced with fury. "You think you can control him? He's mine." The woman tilted her head, a small smirk curling at the corner of her mouth. "No, Victor, he's not yours anymore." The sound of footsteps echoed as the rest of her team closed in. Victor's mind raced. He could feel the trap tightening around him. He was outnumbered, outclassed, and worst of all, betrayed by the one thing he had trusted more than anything. The sound of tires humming against the asphalt was the only thing breaking the silence inside the SUV. Leo sat stiffly, his muscles taut, his mind still processing the shift that had just occurred. He had walked away from Victor, his handler, the man who had been both his partner and master for as long as he could remember. Now, the man who had fed him, trained him, and relied on him for countless illegal operations was in the hands of someone else. Beside him, Agent Kayla Brooks kept her attention on the road, her grip firm on the steering wheel. Her eyes flicked to Leo only occasionally, but there was a look in them that made Leo uneasy, like she was analyzing him, as if she knew him better than Victor had. "You made the right choice," she said softly, her voice almost comforting. "Victor's not who you think he is." Leo's ears perked, but he didn't respond. His mind was clouded with conflicting thoughts. Betrayal was the only thing he had known for the past few years, but now, for the first time in a long time, he found himself questioning everything. Victor had always told him that loyalty to the cause was everything, that they were partners in crime. But now, in this cold, unfamiliar car, Leo felt a coldness creeping in, realizing that perhaps Victor had never truly cared for him. As if reading his thoughts, Kayla continued, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "I know what you're thinking. You think Victor was loyal to you, but he wasn't. He used you, and that's not something I'm going to do." Leo's eyes narrowed slightly, though he didn't show much outward reaction. This woman was offering him something new, something he hadn't experienced in his years of service to Victor and the underground criminal world. But trust wasn't something that could be easily earned. Kayla took a breath, as if weighing her words carefully. "I'm here to take down a criminal empire, one that's been smuggling more than just drugs and weapons. It's far worse than you could imagine, and Victor, he's at the center of it all." Leo shifted uncomfortably, his instincts screaming that he was in too deep now. Betraying Victor had set off a chain reaction that could never be undone. By the time they reached the safe house, a nondescript building hidden deep in the city's industrial district, Leo's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. His past with Victor, the years spent running illegal shipments, the bond they had forged, what did it all mean now? As soon as the car doors opened, Leo stepped out, instinctively surveying the area. He wasn't sure what had happened to the world he had known, but this place felt different. It smelled cleaner, like a place of new beginnings, or perhaps just a temporary stop before the inevitable storm. Agent Brooks led him inside, her movements sharp and purposeful, clearly accustomed to operating in high-stakes situations. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the walls bare and functional. A map of the city, dotted with red pins and circles, hung on one wall, while another wall featured a large screen displaying surveillance footage from various locations. "Welcome to your new world," Kayla said, her voice steady as she flipped on a switch, bringing the monitors to life. On the screen, a grainy image of Victor appeared, handcuffed, sitting in a chair under the harsh lights of an interrogation room. His expression was unreadable, but Leo could see the tension in his body. Victor had always been a man of control, and seeing him in this situation sent a strange wave of satisfaction through Leo. But there was no time for sentiment. The mission wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. "This is what we're up against," Kayla continued, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she brought up more images, pictures of high-ranking smugglers, corrupt officials, and weapons deals that spanned countries. Victor was just one part of a much larger network. They have connections everywhere, government officials, law enforcement, even military personnel. But it's not just weapons they're trafficking, they're dealing in human lives too. Leo's fur bristled. He'd heard rumors of such things, but Victor had always kept him focused on their specific smuggling operations: drugs, arms, money. But human trafficking, that was something else entirely. The thought made his stomach churn, though he would never show it. "I'm guessing Victor didn't tell you everything," Kayla said, watching Leo closely as he studied the images. "He never did. He only told you what you needed to know to do your job, nothing more." Leo's ears flattened at the accusation, though his eyes never left the screen. "Victor was using you, Leo," Kayla said again, her tone softening just a little. "He didn't care about you. He cared about what you could do for him. But now you're part of something bigger, and I promise you, this mission is worth your loyalty." Leo growled low in his throat, a rumble of uncertainty. "Take a look at this," Kayla said, drawing his attention to a final image. A young girl, no more than 12, with wide, fearful eyes. She was bound and gagged, her face bruised. "This is where Victor's empire ends. We find her, we bring her home, and we dismantle the entire network that's been destroying lives like hers." Leo's gaze shifted from the girl's face to the faces of the smugglers and corrupt officials on the screen. For the first time in his life, the idea of loyalty seemed to matter less. He wasn't just a weapon anymore. He was part of something that could make a real difference. Kayla stood up and moved toward the door. "It's time to make our move. We'll need your skills, Leo. We're not just taking down smugglers. We're taking down an empire." Leo's heart thundered in his chest as he followed her toward the exit. A new mission, a new purpose, and this time he wasn't just a tool. This time he was a force for change. The days that followed were a blur of high-stakes operations, secrecy, and relentless planning. Kayla had made it clear that the mission was no longer just about taking down Victor. It was about exposing the entire criminal network that had festered in the shadows for far too long. The empire they had built wasn't just a smuggling ring. It was a force that spanned continents, a web of corruption and violence that threatened to swallow the world whole. Leo, once a tool in Victor's hands, had found his place among Kayla's team. His skills, tracking, stealth, and combat were invaluable. As the days passed, he began to trust Kayla, though a part of him remained uncertain, still haunted by his past and the betrayal that had led him here. But there was no turning back. Now, Kayla's team was small but formidable. Each agent had a specific role, and every move they made was calculated with precision. Together, they gathered intelligence, tracked down leads, and moved swiftly against the various factions of Victor's empire. Leo played his part perfectly, sniffing out hidden locations, identifying informants, and providing invaluable protection during their raids. One evening, after another successful strike against one of Victor's hidden arms caches, Kayla approached Leo as he sat outside watching the horizon. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, but the air still held the weight of tension. The mission was closing in on its final stages, and Leo could sense the change in the air. "You've been amazing, Leo," Kayla said, her voice soft but firm. "But this isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about saving lives." Leo turned his head toward her, his eyes steady. The woman had become someone he trusted, someone who treated him with a respect Victor never had. Still, something inside him nagged at him. Victor was his past, the only life he had known. Now, he was caught between two worlds. But the truth was undeniable. Victor's empire was built on suffering. And for the first time in his life, Leo understood what it meant to fight for something greater than himself. The final operation was set. They had one chance to bring down the last of Victor's lieutenants, the ones controlling the human trafficking ring. It was a dangerous mission, one that required every bit of skill they had. Kayla had formulated a plan, and now it was time to execute it. The night before the raid, Leo stood alone, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness. He was on edge, the adrenaline already coursing through his veins. Tomorrow would be the culmination of everything they had worked for, but it also held the potential for everything to go wrong. Kayla appeared beside him, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light of the safe house. "You're nervous," she said, though it wasn't a question. She could read him as easily as she read a book. Leo's ears flicked back in response. He had never been nervous before, at least not like this. This mission felt different. It wasn't just about taking down an empire, it was about giving people a future, a chance at life. "I know," Kayla continued, her voice steady. "But this is it, Leo. We take them down, and we take down the whole operation. Victor's out of the picture. We finish what we started." Leo growled low, his tail stiffening. Victor had always been his world, but now he was nothing more than a target. Tomorrow, there would be no second chances. As dawn broke, the team moved out. The compound where Victor's last lieutenant was hiding was fortified, but it wasn't invincible. They had the advantage of surprise, and with Leo's skills, they knew they could infiltrate it undetected. They arrived at the compound just before sunrise. Kayla led the charge, her agents fanning out to secure the perimeter. Leo stayed close to her, his presence a silent reassurance. They moved through the compound with deadly precision, taking down guards, disabling surveillance, and preparing to make their move. When they reached the main building, the tension was palpable. Kayla gave a single nod, and the team breached the door, rushing in with guns drawn. Leo followed them, his eyes scanning the interior as they swept through the dark hallways. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire rang out, and chaos erupted. Leo reacted instantly, launching himself into the fray, his powerful jaws sinking into the arm of a guard who had aimed at Kayla. He heard the man scream as he dropped to the ground, incapacitated. Kayla's voice cut through the noise. "We need to move now!" They pushed forward, deeper into the building, where the sound of muffled cries echoed through the walls. Kayla and her team found the cages, the human trafficking victims locked away, their faces filled with fear and desperation. But it was the man standing in front of them that caught Leo's attention. Victor's lieutenant, tall, cruel-eyed, and exuding the same cold menace that had characterized Victor himself. Leo growled, his muscles tensing. This was it. "End of the line," Kayla said, her voice ice-cold as she aimed her weapon. The lieutenant laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you've won. This is bigger than you. It's bigger than all of us." But before he could do anything else, Leo lunged. In one fluid motion, he closed the distance between them, grabbing the man by the throat, his fangs sharp and unwavering. The lieutenant struggled, but Leo's grip was unyielding. "Finish it," Kayla ordered, her voice commanding. With a quick motion, the lieutenant was taken down, his reign of terror finally coming to an end, with the last of Victor's. Network destroyed. The operation was a success. The victims were freed, the empire dismantled, and Victor was behind bars, where he would remain for the rest of his life. Leo stood at the edge of the safe house, looking out at the city. It was quieter now. The weight of his past had been lifted, and though the journey had been difficult, he knew that he had made the right choice. He had done more than just follow orders. He had fought for something meaningful. Kayla approached him, her eyes softening as she watched him. "You did good, Leo," she said, her voice filled with pride. Leo turned to look at her, his tail wagging. Slightly for the first time in what felt like forever. His past was gone, but his future was filled with purpose. He wasn't just a weapon anymore. He was a partner, a protector, and a force for good. And that was the beginning of Leo's new life.